Thanks a lot.
Yeah, you're already fat.
Okay.
I thought I had a different night. I didn't
Just drop some good bit.
I've got it done. Pretty soon I feel like I'm just sitting on the floor, sitting.
Hi, Jansen. How are you, sir? I'm really doing all right? Should we get started? Welcome to if you want to say anything. Okay. Yeah. We'll come from there. There it is.
Yeah, well, that was here. You're supposed to be here? Okay, work. You got some.
Took most of the snacks today.
Still got a few, you know, parts of protocol again. Trending in
Today's better.
trending in the right direction.
That's great.
I just want to know how nervous you are.
Oh, I couldn't even quantify it or describe it.
Hey, Jansen. Where's the That's right here. Yeah, I'm glad you said something. Usually we would have just turned around and realized that we lost
We're definitely doing that. It's already on the phone. Yes. Yeah. I just
John. Okay.
I thought I did.
Before we start the meeting tonight, Dr. Dial would like to say a few words about Maynard Wallace, the former superintendent here.
So, Mr. Wallace served as resident of Thornfield, served as superintendent at Forsyth, taught at Sparta for a long time, was a great advocate. He was a representative, Missouri State representative for us, and was a great advocate for public education. Great mentor to many people in Southwest Missouri and a great friend. Passed away Sunday morning, I guess, at Honest Farm in Thornfield, which no better place for him to be. So I'd just like to take a moment of silence to remember him and what he has done for public education in the state of Missouri, because he truly fought the fight every day for us in Jeff City. So.
Good.
Yeah, thank you.
I call this meeting to order. First thing is the Pledge of Allegiance.
Jansen, you good?
Yes. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item is the consent agenda. It's for the approval of the regular meeting minutes, December 17th, the approval of the financial balances summary fund, authorization for payment of bills, approval of updated substitute list, approval of proposed agenda. You need a motion to approve. Mark makes a motion. Do we have a second? Dan seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carried 7-0. Next item, we would like to welcome our new student board member, Jansen Breshears.
Jansen, how are you today? Want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
My name is Jansen Breshears. I take part in the band program as well as choir, and I'm happy to be here today, and I will do my best to help however I can.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate you.
I'm assuming we're going to get a plaque for him.
Yep, we are.
It's ordered. It's ordered. I sent your order to Dina Parsik instead of
I guess you ordered.
Dana for design and she couldn't help me. So,
For the second time.
it'll be here tomorrow.
We'll put it on the table and you come and sit down.
I'll bring it to you tomorrow, yeah.
Next item is our MSBA monthly board report.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Missouri School Boards Association's board report for the month of January. We thank you for the opportunity to share some news and information during a few minutes of your board meeting. We begin with a look at the decision by the State Board of Education to move forward with state assessments this spring. The State Board voted at its December meeting to continue to administer statewide assessments to students next year, but to suspend the use of the test results from state and federal accountability systems because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Commissioner of Education, Dr. Margie Van Dieven, said during the meeting she expects COVID-19 will have an impact on assessment results.
We don't want our educators spending their time right now thinking about a standardized test. We want them to be educating our kids, and we believe that if they continue to educate the kids to the best of their ability, the scores generally take care of themselves, but we expect to see some differentiation. Who wouldn't expect to see that?
State Board of Education President Charlie Shields said it's important to understand if there are achievement losses as a result of the pandemic.
You know, when this started back in March of last year, I mean, we were talking about just the end of that school year. Now this has dragged on and you know, potentially has a year and a half effect on that. So I think we understand losses. I think it's also equally important to understand, did those losses occur more in underserved communities? So children that face significant socioeconomic challenges, did we see higher levels of achievement losses in those communities? So once we know that, I think what happens is it allows us to begin to think about what does an appropriate remediation plan look like. But you can't develop a remediation plan if you don't understand the challenge out there.
The decision by the State Board of Education followed a discussion of the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education's 2021 assessment plan. As the 2021 regular session of the Missouri General Assembly gets underway this month, an issue likely to be discussed is changing the school board election date from April to the November general election. MSBA believes school board elections should continue to be held on the municipal election day. MSBA's Associate Executive Director for Advocacy, Mike Reed, says moving school board elections to the November general election would make those elections more partisan and would create another problem.
The other problem is that there is not an election every November. There's a general election every other November, so it would throw off the election of school board members, so we would elect 4 members one time and 2 members, or 3 members the next time. And so it could be very problematic.
MSBA believes school board elections should remain nonpartisan, so school board members can focus on what's best for students. By the way, candidate filing for the April school board elections closes on January 19th. There are resources available to school board candidates posted on the MSBA website, including a legal guide to running for the school board. MSBA's priorities for the 2021 session of the General Assembly include legislation to ensure a safe education environment for all children, funding to ensure adequate resources for all school districts to meet state and federal standards, legislation and funding to allow school districts to offer quality, voluntary pre-kindergarten programs, and legislation supporting the expansion of and access to high-capacity broadband internet services throughout Missouri. MSBA will keep you informed about legislative developments during the session through our weekly Legislative Voice newsletter, our daily updates on Twitter, through critical issue alerts, and through periodic webinars. School board members throughout the state will be honored for their work during School Board Recognition Week, February 14th through 20th, as declared by Governor Parson. It's a great opportunity for communities to honor local school board members who provide leadership to our local school districts throughout the state. Check the MSBA website for resources related to School Board Recognition Week. That's it for this month's edition of the MSBA Board Report. Thanks for allowing us to have some time at your board meeting, and so long from Columbia.
Our next item is the Ava Board Spotlight. Tonight we have the Ava R1 custodial staff. I think Dr. Dial would like to talk a little bit about the work that they've been doing.
Mr. Valentine is bringing them in, I think, correct? They're probably pretty excited. They're probably pretty excited about coming in. So this is most of our night crew. And our newest addition to our night crew is standing there in the middle, Ava. So we just want to point out the additional work that especially our night crew has gone through, and our day crew, but the additional work with cleaning. And we try to clean our bathrooms every, was it 3 hours, Monty, during the day? But then just the extra cleaning that we do at night, whether it be fogging the rooms, making sure that we wipe down every touch surface in every room, in every building. It's been a tremendous amount of work. And I think, they come in after the kids are leaving, especially this crew comes in after the kids are leaving, and go home after everybody else has gone to bed. So I just want to thank them for their work publicly. Great group of people who are willing to do whatever is asked of them. So I just want to say thank you on behalf of the board, on behalf of the students and the teachers. We appreciate you very much. Hang on.
Hold on. We didn't tell you there was going to be a picture first.
Put Ava in the front. So Ava is a senior in high school.
Oh, junior.
Junior, sorry. You just act so much older. So Ava, we were needing some additional support just for a few hours a night, and Ava was jumping in, and I will tell you, I'll embarrass her in front of everybody. So everybody she works with has told me what a great job she does. And we had a substitute last week that called out of the blue and said, "Hey, I just want you to know she's awesome." And she was a great help to me tonight. He kind of knew what he was supposed to be doing, but sub in the building, obviously. So I just want to publicly say that about you, Davis, to embarrass you. All right.
You ready? 1, 2, 3.
Jeez.
Our next item is Jana Hesterly, Heart of the Hills. I think Katie Bertdahl is going to talk to us.
So this is Jana and her crew. The rest of the group, come on, stand up. This is her board members and some of her volunteers. And we just want to give them a big, just a big thank you. Are you retiring? Is it?
Yes, yes.
So these lovely people are such an asset to our school district, as every Thanksgiving since I've been here, which is 6 years, and I don't know how long they've been doing this, they provide turkeys and Thanksgiving meals to our families. This year it was 12 turkeys total, so 4 families in each building, and they do all the behind the scenes work, and they will never know how much our families appreciate that. Every time we have called families, There have been tears of joy, and they are just very thankful. And without these people, we would not be able to serve our kids and our families and our communities. There's been many times that we've had families in a crisis, and we've called Jana, and she's just made it happen. She doesn't ask questions, she just knows it's what we have to do because it's what's best for kids. And so we just want to give them a big thank you, because without this organization, our kids, you know, we just want to be able to take care of them like we want to. So thank you from the bottom of our hearts, and we appreciate you, and I'm going to miss you, but happy retirement. So.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, you guys sing. You heard it all. Oh, okay. Thank you.
Next item is our principal and director reports. Elementary principal, Dr. Clint Hall.
Okay, I'd like to give a shout out to Mrs. Lawler. Her class was featured in the Douglas County Herald this week for an experiment they're doing with masks. So they had a student wear a mask and cough into a petri dish, and then they had him cough into another petri dish without a mask, and they're comparing those over the next 2 weeks to see if there's a difference in the samples. She had the kids take a pre-survey, they're going to take a post-survey, and write an opinion paper about the results. I got to watch the lesson. Kids were super excited for the science experiment. They're super excited to do the writing. So just a shout out to Mrs. Lawler for taking that on.
Thank you. Middle school principal, Miss Patty Nelson.
First, I'd like to recognize Walmart. They helped us purchase gift cards for our students of the month for the month of January. We appreciate their donation. Next of all, if any of you have been by our middle school and looked up, you notice we are in dire need of a flag. Our Honor Society in the middle school stepped up and purchased 2 flags, one that is made of material for the winter months and one for the summer months. And tomorrow, our local BFW is going to come by and provide a flag raising ceremony. So we greatly appreciate their service.
Thank you. High school principal, Dr. Teresa Nash.
Ava high school teachers have been participating in data meetings. We've been talking about student achievement and what we can do in the classroom to help those students who are struggling. We're gearing up for EOCs, which will be coming the end of April. So, you know, we're just trying to figure out where we are and what we need to do before EOCs get here so that we have our students prepared. Also, Student Council is hosting our Hoopcoming, which is the week of February 8th through the 12th. The coronation will be on February 12th, right before the varsity game. I'd like to say congratulations to our Queen candidates, Kaylee Downs, Cheyenne Miley, and Kira Rothenberg, and also our King candidates, Quentin Donnelly, Peyton Evans, and Aiden Murphy.
Thank you. Special Services Director, Miss Melissa Dalton.
Currently for our department, we have 13 reevaluations going on and 18 initials. 9 students have been dismissed so far from services because they've met their goals. Following up with you guys a little bit on the behavior stuff we had talked about the last couple of meetings. I've got a group out of Willow Springs right now that's going to come in monthly and work with a kiddo or 2 that we need some guidance on. Just working on some different options for those behaviors, talking with some things on Dr. Dial, just what would be best to meet those needs. Signed up, this is to follow up about the special education teacher position last month. I've signed up for a career day at Evangel on February 11th, where it is going to be geared towards their students that are student teaching right now, and then their upperclassmen education students. They will be at that career fair, so I'm going to go to that, and I think Mrs. Nelson is going to join me. just to try to, you know, let them know what Ava's all about. I've also been told that Missouri State and Drury will have students there as well, so gonna work on that. Dr. Dial had asked me to share a little bit about second mile therapy. He had a question on that. So I'll share a little bit, and if you've got any questions, you can ask me on that. Second Mile Therapy is our organization that provides our speech and language, occupational therapy, and physical therapy needs to our students. Last year we had kind of shopped around, I guess you would say. We had talked to some other districts, just wanting to make sure that we were getting the best services we could for the money we were spending, and like I said, talked to some other districts, and really just felt like Second Mile was the group to stay with. They have always been really good to us, and their therapists do a great job. Those services, again, are for our kiddos with IEPs that need language, need speech, need occupational therapy or physical therapy. Most of those therapists come in 2 days a week. I'm trying to think what else you might want to know on then, Dr. Dodd, can you think of anything else?
So we have speech implementers
Right,
that are employed by our district,
Yeah.
but in order, legally, we have to have a speech therapist supervise them and do their initial evaluation.
Right.
So that's why we use them. Some people may think that our speech implementers can just do that work. They can't. They have to have somebody supervising them. Obviously, the PT and the OT positions are more specialized. How many kids? So how many kids?
Oh,
I'm guessing.
I know, golly, I wouldn't even want to.
Between all three of them, it's.
I would say that have speech impairment or language impairment as their eligibility, we're 70 to 80 kids. Now, we have multiple kids though that is not their eligibility, and they still get speech or language or OT or PT. And again, don't quote me on that number, that's just ballpark. And like he was saying, our SLP, that's the speech language pathologist, she just comes 2 days a week. Those ladies do the evaluations, the screens if we need them. They train the implementers, and then the SLP does provide some services, but for the most part, our 2 speech implementers provide the primary services after the students have qualified for eligibility. That program is going to be phased out. We have been told next year, the speech implementer program, so we're working on speech language pathologist assistants or what they are going towards, and those are very few and far between, so we're working on preparing for that.
We have a year, so it's 2022.
Yeah, we're good through next year, but May 2022 is when they said they're going to stop that. So just some things that we work on as a district to recoup some of that cost, I guess you would say. Our students that are on Medicaid, we can get some reimbursement for that. Parents have to give us permission to do that, so it's just honestly getting paperwork signed, and we work on that every year. This year, something new, we have some that qualify for a high needs fund that what we spend on certain students far outweighs what it would on a student that didn't have special needs. And so we're working on tracking that throughout this year and going to try to recoup some costs there. So, and I've got Amy Phipps coming next week on Tuesday. I mentioned her last month just for some of the things that she can work on to look over our department and see what we can do to, best meet our needs. So, anything else on Second Mile or questions on that?
I think we're good. We thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to say one thing to you and Miss Nelson before we go any further. One of my faults in life is I don't say thank you enough. And I try to get better at that as I get older, but anyone that knows me will say that I will preach over and over and over, listen to your employees. If you ever are in a management position, always listen to your employees. And the two of you have exhibited that, and that's why I'm saying this now. I had a person tell me the other day, you don't know how nice it is to talk to somebody that actually listens. Now, I know with the COVID thing, and I know there's lots of other people out there, and I've just singled out these two, but with the COVID thing, as a supervisor or an administrator, you're in a position where you're frustrated and have anxiety just like everybody else. But you two did not pass that on to your employees. You supported your employees and you listened to what they had to say and you made their job easier. And I appreciate that.
Next item is Maintenance Director, Mr. Monty Valentine. He's back with us.
Yeah, like I say, I'm happy to be back. I'd like to thank everybody in my department that handled lots of things while I was gone. I'm working on getting stronger. Thanks.
Thank you. Food Service, Yvonne Honorkamp.
I miss some of you guys that here been on all of it, but it's nice to meet everybody. We've been working pretty hard on trying to get the menus and stuff switched up and get our participation up for our kids and better food, filling them up a little better. But the other copies of our counts have gone up in the middle school, high school, about 150 since we started back in January. So that's really good. The kids are all complimenting the food. We've got several compliments from staff members. We had a coach come into the cafeteria one morning after basketball practice and was telling us that the kids made him come over to tell us how good the food was and they were happy to eat in the cafeteria again. So we're working real hard on getting everybody taken care of and everybody's switching over real easy. We're really doing great. And if you guys have any questions or concerns, don't hesitate to get hold of me or email me or call me. I'm always there.
So just to touch base on numbers.
Yes.
So I ran versus a year ago.
Yes.
So it is the 21st of January, so we got to remember that. We have fed, between breakfast, lunch, and teachers, we've fed 24,436 meals as of today. January of 2020, so the full month, we fed 29,361. So I'm pretty sure we're going to exceed that pretty easy. So.
Everything's going great.
Yeah.
The changes and stuff
So,
are amazing and everybody's pleased with it.
Just wanted to, I don't think it'll be a problem to beat that number.
I had a teacher call me up and say she had a student in her class that she couldn't get to eat biscuits and gravy. It's not going to be any good. I'm not going to eat it. She kept telling this kid, come on, eat it. It's good. I'm eating it. Look. And kid ate the whole biscuit and gravy and wanted more. And the teacher had an extra one. I don't know why. And he ate it too.
My daughter is the same way. She's in third grade, and she hated the biscuits and gravy that we were serving with Ava. And it took her 2 times of serving it before I finally got her to eat. And she comes in with me in the mornings, and I told her, so just take a bite. She came in there and wanted the second biscuit after about 10 minutes, and she downed all that. She goes, that's really good. Yeah, you gotta try some of the other stuff too, even though it didn't taste good before, it's going to now.
So your count may go up even more. Some of these kids are
29,000. That's what we did last year, and we've already hit the 20.
Yvonne, I'd like to thank you and Lisa Baker and the rest of the crew for working hard, getting this going in the middle of the year. And I'd like to thank Dr. Dial. He put a lot of work into it also. I know it was a tough thing, but my phone is exploding every day. I'm getting pictures of the food. I've had people from the Sheriff's Department, people from auto parts stores call. Their kids are saying it's the best they've ever had. It sounds like it's a big success, and I'm really happy for the district to move on from OPA into what we've done. So I'd like to thank you for all the hard work you're doing. And I'm sure once it gets dialed in, it'll just keep getting better. And some of the kids are afraid to try things, but I've had some stories just like what Dan said, where they wouldn't try something, then they tried it and ate the whole thing, and then they wanted more, you know.
Yes,
so.
yeah. And we're offering samples too. If we have, stuff that we've got extra that is new that they've not tried or something that they've had before, we know that we've improved. We're offering samples for them just to try it out too. So.
Well, good job.
Thank you.
Thank you. Executive Administration Report, Dr. Dial.
So, Board of Education sign-up ended last night at 5 o'clock. So we've had 5 people sign up to run for the 2 spots on the board. Those are Mrs. Parsick, Mr. Bedeker, Chance Dry, Jason Churchill, and Carol Floyd. I think Carol's here tonight, correct? I haven't met her, but I've heard about her. So Carol Floyd is our the other sign-up. So we have 5 people running for those 2 spots. So we feel like we have quality candidates. So. All right, now I'm going to try to go through a bunch of information and try not to get lost myself. So financially, we're up to 93% funding rate, so it's climbing slowly. So we're hoping to get to that 100% by June. So we still have $125 million that's being withheld by the governor, but good signs. He's released a significant amount of money to higher ed, so we believe that there could be some release of additional funds as we go through the spring. The economy in the state is still good, but really what I want to focus on tonight is, if you remember, we had ESSER 2 funds, or ESSER funds last spring in March. Of $429,009 is what we received last spring from the federal government. And that was to help us weather the COVID storm. So in December, there was ESSER 2 was passed. So it's all based on our Title I expenditure. It's how it is allocated to school districts. DESE has not released information to date on ESSER 2, but it appears we're going to be receiving 4 times what we received from ESSER 1. So if you take $429,009 and times it by 4, you have $1,716,036 would be our allocation. So a week ago Friday, Kansas, Randy Jackson, the commissioner in Kansas, had a meeting with his superintendents, and he sent out the use of funds. So this comes from the federal government. Even though it says Kansas on it, this is what it will be for Missouri as well. So the only thing different from ESSER 1 to ESSER 2 is really 11, 12, 13, and 14, and 15 on the back page. So we should have a meeting next week or the week after. Dr. Monsees, the Deputy Commissioner in charge of finance in the state, I talked to him on Tuesday. He believes that they will be ready to give Missouri allocations and a webinar to talk about the use of funds, like I said, next week or the week after. He did confirm with what I thought it would be 4 times what our original ESSER allocation was. So we should see that money sometime in April or May. So we will need to talk about that in the coming months once we get confirmation from Missouri on the amount and what those use of funds can be for. And it can be for expenses all the way back to March 12th of 2020. Does that make sense? So we can look at all of that. So then we have President Biden has developed another plan. It's $1.9 trillion. Don't know that it's going to go anywhere at this point, but I know that there's a lot of conversation about what that looks like. The information I have is probably sketchy at best, but from what I can gather and talking to other superintendents, it's $130 billion for K-12 education, and that is the number currently for K-12. If it's distributed the same way as ESSER 2 and ESSER 1 through the Title I allocation, which I assume it will be, our allocation would be $4.08 million. That's a significant amount of money. So, obviously, this could go through several changes. Obviously, anything that hits the Senate or the House floor can go through several changes. We don't know what those restrictions could be, but I just want you to know that that's out there. That type of money is out there. My understanding is there's some infrastructure pieces in that. There could be some infrastructure pieces in that new bill. So, as we have talked, as we've talked as a board, you all have talked about some things that you're interested in and you'd like to see. I've done some financial work to kind of figure out if let's say we didn't get anything with President Biden's plan, how we could do some of those things. So we currently have 3 lease purchases. The school district holds 3 lease purchases where we borrowed money and we make payments. 2 of those were originated or refinanced, either originated or refinanced in 2015, and the other originated in 2013. We pay about $450,000 to $475,000 a year, depending on the amortization schedule, payments on those 3. The 2 that were either originated in 15 or were refinanced in 2015 will be paid off in 2025, is the end of that. And the one that was in 2013 will be paid off in 2027. So they were 10 and 15-year notes, basically. All 3 could be refinanced if we wanted to. They're callable in July of this year, and which would allow the district to access approximately an additional $2 million for construction and renovation purposes if the board wanted to go that route. This would extend that payment schedule to 2036 if we did it that way. We obviously don't want to make any decisions tonight until we have a greater understanding of what the possibility of the 1.9 trillion would be. I just wanted to do that work up front, so I had that information. I know we've talked about storm shelter over at the elementary and what that could look like with preschool. We've talked about, there's some renovations that need to happen in other buildings, whether they be doors or windows. We have some older HVAC units that we'll be able to access, be able to fix. That's one of the new guidelines, air quality, and the 1.7 million. So as we get more information, we'll bring it to you. But I also thought if we're going to start having this discussion, or if you want to start having this discussion, we probably need to get a group of people, community people, staff people, some board members, to start having that conversation and actually go through our facilities, look at what we have, start putting some ideas together, and then I can start getting some numbers to present to them. So, not asking for any action, just trying to start the planning process if we want to do something down the road. How we would pay for that, we can make that decision at a later date. So.
On that funding from the federal government, nobody knows what's going to happen the way things are, but I've watched this now for over a year. One thing that's almost certain is there's always money in there for schools. Mm-hmm. That's a political hot potato, and everybody jumps on board. The 130 million, it'll probably pass. That's what's in there for K through 12.
K-12, yeah. There's 45 million for higher ed, is that right? It's 175
It's 180, I think, altogether, and then K through 12 is supposed to get like 130.
Yeah, that's what I read too.
The other thing beyond that, which all this just staggers my mind, I just can't kind of grasp it. They're doing this, but there's supposed to be an infrastructure plan come up. And in the infrastructure plan, there's supposed to be money in there for schools too. So there may be grant money out there for
absolutely
to do whatever you want to do.
So we've currently written a grant. See where it goes. We're applying that for safety and security. So that will help us replace some windows, hopefully some classroom doors that are hollow core, big window. Mrs. Swadish and Brandon Reed and I talked to a guy on the phone. He's helping us complete that. So it's interesting. But I think in order to be prepared, we need to have a direction. So that's what I think, that's what I'm talking to you about, is gathering a group of people. So if you have suggestions in the community, if you're, I think I know some of you that may be interested in that. We'll reach out to staff as well that may be interested in that. Take some tours, have some conversations, and we can start developing some thoughts and ideas.
There's going to be so much money out there. If we aren't ready, ready, set, go, you're not going to be able to buy material like air conditioners, stuff like that.
So that's the thought process. So that's the way I would like to move with the boards. You don't have to just shake your head. You don't need approval to do that. But I think just being proactive. Okay. Hopefully we won't touch a lease purchase, won't think about that because we'll pay those off and be debt free.
Question. How much total, say next July, is our debt going to be? Estimate.
2.7 million. It's higher than that, I'm lying to you. I think it's closer to 5. But I can get you that number exactly. It's on my desk. I have it exactly on my desk.
I'd like to, I don't know if we can or not, but if, I would like to pay off some of our debt, or maybe all of it if we can. And that would free up $400,000 every year from now on if we can stay out of debt. And then we know what we can do more about teacher raises and what we need to spend on buildings and.
We can absolutely look at that as we move through the school year.
That, you might not do everything you want to do right now, but you would free up that money so that my cash flow is still coming back to you for the long term. I just don't like that kid.
So, previous life, different position, passed a bond issue, separate levy, goes into Fund 3. They had a fairly large lease purchase payment every year. We paid it off with inside that bond issue. Cash flowed $750,000 a year back to operating. So.
And another thing, I almost forgot. I think it was a gentleman that was talking from MSBA, president. There was a discussion about paying teachers bonuses next year, coming back.
Charlie Shields.
Yeah. Have you heard anything?
I've heard about it. I mean, part of it's, if there's going to have to be funding for that, it was in it. He thinks it's a good idea. It hasn't gone past that at this point.
Okay.
But I did listen to the board meeting when he made that statement. So, okay. I gave you the numbers on food service. Yvonne and her crew are doing a great job and they're working really hard. Kind of just a brief COVID update. As of this afternoon, we've had 60 staff or students test positive at this point for COVID. And we've had 419 staff or students quarantined. It seems we kind of picked up pace right after Christmas. It's kind of slowed back down. I've only had to contact trace 2 different cases since Christmas. Anybody else that was quarantined was because of outside contact outside the school. It was mainly over Christmas break. We had a little bit of a flurry that first week, but it's slowed down. So that's a good thing. Mr. Dolan has sent out a survey to staff, and if they would be interested when the COVID vaccine becomes available, if they would be interested. Obviously, we don't require anything. We got a good response back from that in the 50s, right in there.
I think we're going north of that now, but yeah.
I've had lots of retired teachers that sub or tutor for us that are interested. I talked to them several times in the last week. So Missouri Ozarks Community Health, they got the first round of vaccines. They did the first round right at Christmas. They're doing the second round this week and next week. They are hoping to be able to order additional vaccines. For some reason, their Wednesday order got denied, but they were trying to figure that out. They're going to start, hopefully, they're going to start vaccinating people in the community that are 65 or older or have a health condition on Thursdays and Fridays from 1 to 4. It's a 30 a day. Is that what he told us? I think 30 a day. So hopefully that's going to start ramping up. The health department's trying to get some as well. So if you are interested in that, MOC is your primary source at this point. As soon as the health department does something, they'll make an announcement community-wide as soon as they receive some. So anyway, that's all I have, sir.
Thank you.
Be on the lookout for bills. Senate Bill 55, dangerous. Came out of the House, out of the Senate Education Committee today. So, just don't know where it's going, but Dr. Esslinger, who's our senator, is going to do her best to not let it get out of the Senate.
What's it do?
A lot. Open enrollment vouchers, basically. There's a ton of stuff. Mr. Dalton.
Wanted to follow up with something we had touched on at our last meeting when we were talking about the number of students that we had that were still virtual, that we anticipated coming back to see the classes at the start of second semester. Our building principals did a ton of work trying to get all that organized and get all that information gathered. We did those numbers of the number of students that we have still taking virtual classes it's decreased significantly. You know, to this point, it's for the most part students that are still virtual, students that were able to navigate that successfully first semester. You know, we talked about the number of students that really struggled with that first semester for lots of different reasons. And the majority of those students have come back seated at this point. You heard me talk about standalone virtual classes. You know, the number I talked about, we really needed that to be if you had 20 students in a given class, that would justify a standalone virtual class. And I think 5 through 12, I'm gonna look back here, we don't have any standalone virtual classes, correct? Those numbers are low enough that those teachers are just teaching all seated students. Our virtual students were utilizing some online programs that are available for us to manage those numbers where they are now. I know we talked, you do, if I have a student who struggled and was behind on some concepts first semester and they come back, I mean, it is a challenge, it is. But the feedback from staff is overwhelmingly been positive. There are absolutely challenges. There are extra steps, extra tutoring, extra things that are having to take place to try to get students back up to speed or caught up for whatever it was that they missed for whatever reason. But we do believe that overall that has been definitely a positive thing for our kids. Touched on state assessments. You know, we knew last month when we met, these assessments were still going to take place, but it wouldn't be used for state accountability. You know, we always use those, and this is easy to say. I'll look at my teachers. I know I've got teachers from tested areas, at least a couple sitting here. We talk about, hey, we really just want to see where our students are at. We're going to evaluate our curriculum. We're going to, hey, did this lesson work with this strategy? It's stressful. You know, when that's going to be out there and it's going to be posted, it just is. I'm looking to see if they agree. It's just a stressful thing when you do that testing. Not that this won't be stressful still, just because of the situation the way it was last year when we were here. But I think knowing, hey, this data, when we get it back, it is just for us to evaluate our kids and where we're at. What do we need to do to help them master the skills that they need? You know, so that, we appreciate the state recognizing where we were. You know, you hear arguments for not taking the assessments at all, but when you hear them describe them, we've got to be able to identify where our kiddos are as it relates to the state standards. But that hopefully, and we'll have a chance to talk about that as a staff at our PD day coming up. You know, hopefully that takes some of the stress off of that. I mean, it just is. And that is truly going to be for us to evaluate where our students are at and map out a plan on what we need to do moving forward. Federal programs, I don't think I'd mentioned this before. Every region has a state supervisor. You hear me talk about Title I, Title II, Dr. Dial was referencing it. Every region has a supervisor that you work with, and we've had the same supervisor for as long as I've been doing it. Tremendous help. She retired. I can tell you I was nervous. She was a go-to resource. But our person who's taking that role on, it just is, it's a different personality, but it's really been helpful as far as pointing out changes that took place this year and some options that are available to us in the future moving forward that just opens up some flexibility with some of that funding. You know, a lot of times you hear us talk about Title I, Title II, Title IV. You have this money available, but you have very specific things that you can do with it. With some of the changes that have come down, and changes specific to us, You know, you talk about our census data, you hear me reference those things, so I'm talking about Title I. There's just some ability there to have some additional flexibility with some of that funding that we think, you know, we're just not going to meet more needs with that funding. So that's been a positive. I touched on our PD day we've got coming up, and kind of circling back on some things we talked about last month. You know, we're going to go over some calendar options when we talk about our school day and what that looks like. And I went through and actually mapped out and did the math on what the 4-day weeks would look like, depending on some different things. You know, I tried to reference some work I had done last year on that, but we're going to talk through it, just so everyone has that information. Talk about what early outs look like, you know, some of the regs and the guidelines on school attendance have changed. So we're going to go through that entire gamut of scenarios, just so teachers have all that information. You know, when we talked about that, it made me go back and, all right, what did this process look like before? And that, you know, that's what that is. When we moved from early outs to the all-day PD days, that was a way more in-depth process than what just a normal calendar approval process would look like. So we're going to touch on that on our opening on that PD day. We talked about a retention survey. So I've spent quite a bit of time myself looking at different surveys that really different industries, not just schools. Honestly, the ones that I saw for schools, you know, you just try to go through and see what you think best fits our people, our staff, in all areas. So we've got that built. I know Dr. Dials looked through it, and you know, nobody else is probably guilty of this. I'll read something and I see the way it reads, and I need another set of eyes to make sure it reads the way that I'm reading it. But that is different enough. I want to talk through staff what we want to know. Hey, if there are things we're not doing well, we need to improve. We want to know that. There's areas that are strengths, and that's why they love teaching. We want to know that. So done some work trying to get that built, and we're going to go through that with staff and share that on that category. One category is technology, STEM-related projects, and then well-rounded education.
So you're going to be able to put more money into those categories? Well,
so what we're going to be able to do, so those are, what you're limited to there is a certain percentage in each one of those categories at a given time. Well, you can actually transfer from that to Title V, which we can use across the board in the district, so you can still do those same things. You're just not capped at a 15% on any one of those areas during a certain cycle. Does that make, so you can still address all those areas, but if we have a need, hey, we need more for mental health programs. You know, you heard come out of our surveys, whether that was just mental health resources. You know, that was something I had referenced some last month or the month before that I hadn't seen in my surveys before, and it was just repeated. You know, if that's something we felt like, boy, there's a program we could implement or a tool we could use with students, but I'm capped. Yes, we could go to district dollars to do that if we identified that as a need, but now with some of that flexibility, I may be able to transfer that and do the whole thing out of title funds and not have to pull from district funds to do that.
Okay.
So, yeah. Thanks for asking. I need to clarify what that looks like. Anything else?
Got another, thank you. When I first became board member a year and a half ago, sat down here, Mr. Dalton was on my right, and I said, I think he said A+ awareness with parents was 46%. And I said, man, we need to do something about that. And he didn't just kind of go, oh, all right, okay. He enthusiastically tackled that. 2 years later, I think it was in the last board meeting, parents, 86% of the parents are aware of A+. Now, I don't know if Mr. Dalton did it, or if it's my imagination, or if it's Nash, or if a multitude of people did this, but it seems to me like the kids that are doing tutoring now aren't just doing it to get my A+ funding. It's not like it's just something I need to do to get to there. I think the kids now that are doing the tutoring feel like that they're making a contribution to someone else's life, that they're making a difference. And I think it's an eye-opener to those kids that, hey, I can make a difference in society. I'm doing something for somebody else other than myself. So I'd like to thank Mr. Dalton, because to me, A+ is a big deal. Kids, maybe kids that weren't going to go to college can, because they think that they can't afford to go to college. Now, I don't know how it is now, but I assume A+ pays for up to 60 hours.
But those levels change every year, but yeah, it is significant. It is significant.
So I looked just on Missouri State West Plains. I know we've got some kids, it's in the paper this week, there's a couple of kids going into nursing. I looked at Missouri State West Plains, it's $180 an hour. So 60 hours times $180, folks, that's a lot of money. And every parent needs to be aware of that. So, thank you, Mr. Dalton.
I appreciate it. 12 hours a semester now, and then drop it.
Yeah, I believe that. Let's be clear, I know Mrs. Bartell was here, there's a lot of people involved in the process. I know with our seniors, we track them down. Parents are probably tired of hearing from them. You know, if I've got kids that are close and aren't participating, we go find them and just, that's what I tell them. I just want them to be aware. You know, you don't have to do it. Here are the benefits, here are the possibilities. There's been a lot of people involved in the process. Thank you.
More questions for Mr. Dalton? Next is our discussion and action items. First item is designate school contacts. Dr. Dial will give us a rundown on that.
So we have to do this every year, and it's just designated those people who the initial contact is within the school district. Doesn't always mean that they handle every one of those situations, but they are the initial contact and responsible for the state reporting piece within the school district for these programs. So homeless coordinator is our special education director. You don't name the person, you name the position, obviously. Our ESL is special education director. Special education, obviously, is special education director. The safety director is the maintenance director, plus we added a safety committee of our staff within the district, and Mr. Hauk oversees that. So it's both of those people. Title I, assistant superintendent, that's federal programs. Bullying coordinator, that we developed, the program we developed a couple years ago, is assistant superintendent. 504 coordinator is the special education director. Title IX, it used to be the activities director, but with the new Title IX changes, Mr. Dalton is the coordinator, I'm the decision maker. Then we have investigators. So with that law that changed and went into effect this year, we had to move that away. When people think of Title IX, they think of equal opportunity in athletics for females, and that's not what it is. That is a piece of it, but that's a small piece of a big law. And then foster care is the special education director, so we just need to approve those district contacts.
We need a motion to approve those district contacts. Do I have a motion?
Make it.
Mark makes the motion. Do we have a second? Randy seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Our next item is Community Involvement Program Review, and I think Melissa Dalton is going to give us a rundown on that.
Yeah. It's a little different this year because of virtual. We had to revamp parent community involvement. It's just been different. Our goal here is to increase student achievement by enhancing parent, school, child, community relationships and building ties between home and school. There in our evaluation criteria, the first one listed, the district indicates the following activities or programs for providing parents with information about their children's developmental stages. And you see the list there, and I just checked with each building. Most of those have stayed the same. There were a few that we added and some that we had to take away just because of the time we're living in. Number 2 there, describe any formal programs that are aimed at improving the quality of the parent-school cooperation interactions. The 4 big ones there that we have: Parents as Teachers program, the Signs of Suicide training that we've done the last few years, the vaping presentations for students and parents, that's been around the last couple of years, and then the mock prenatal program is new to us this year. Mrs. Bergdahl is part of that program, so that's something that's been included. The Ava Parent Involvement Program Review. This is a section that changed a lot from last year to what we're doing this year, and again, a lot is due to COVID. Those first few that I listed there, the open house meet and greet, the parent-teacher conferences, the little caveat this year, you know, everything's always been in person. This year we put in our survey that went out in person or virtual, because we had a lot that we wanted to give them that option. If they weren't able to come on campus, we still wanted them to feel a part of things, and so we had a lot of things that we've opened up virtually to still be able to have that contact and that interaction. Our counselors have done a great job this year of posting things. Just an example, our elementary counselor, for teachers that want it, she posts resources on classroom teachers pages. Our middle school counselor has her own classroom page set up where she posts mental health resources, for example. Just things that they're trying to push out for parents and community, especially in the time that we live in. They've done a great job this year. Things that we're still doing: the Signs of Suicide training, the Community Opioid Task Force, our after-school programs with the Bears Den, something I was excited to hear. Bears Den has scheduled for, I believe, the first week in May, an art walk and a book fair. And that's something, the book fair is something the kids in the elementary always look forward to, and we weren't sure if we were going to get to have it this year. And they're taking steps to make sure that we get to do that, hopefully in May, so they got that set up. So I was excited to hear about that. Our JAG program in the high school, Mock does a great job for us. They have a dental bus that is parked over by the elementary in December pretty much the whole month, and they pull kids and bring them out and help them with those dental services, whether they need to do it or even it's just more of a convenience to not have to take them out of school and take them over to the Mock. They can just do it right here on campus, which is great. And again, that prenatal program I listed in there, Mrs. Lawler's, trying to think what to call it. She's cooperated with the Community Foundation of the Ozarks and that face mask effectiveness, I guess, little trial that they're doing. So I included that. Veterans Day, that was one thing that changed a lot. We always did big programs in each building. Had our veterans come in, and with COVID, we kind of had to revamp that. So our high school media class created a video, brought people in to participate in that, and then they broadcast that in all the classrooms. So I thought that was a good way. We tried to be creative with our ways to still involve the community and parents and things that we did. Mentioned earlier, Heart of the Hills. We have a lot of groups, a lot of churches that help us with the food distribution to our families, which is very important. Kindergarten, 4th grade, and our National Junior Honor Society did Christmas cards for the nursing home. Our National Junior Honor Society always does a lot of things to help. They provided wrapping paper for the angel tree gifts and got that to an area church to help put out. I don't know if this really fit, but I thought it was really cool this year, the drive-in concert that the band put on. You know, we provide concerts, but I thought that was just a creative way to try to bridge the gap between COVID and wanting people to be involved, and so I thought that was something worth mentioning.
So, just to touch on that, KKOZ broadcast that if you drove into the parking lot, turn your radio on to 92.1 because the ball game came on late at night because they could broadcast the concert, which was kind of cool.
I thought that was something great they did. Homecoming parade, we tried to make it as much like in the past as we could, and we still had great community involvement, and that we could throw the candy, which was really sad for the little kids that were standing there with their bags. So hopefully next year that'll be back to normal. Our National Honor Society does a ton of things in the high school. They set up a food drive this year and collected over 1,200 pounds of food that went out to the Heart of the Hills, and it was donated to area families. They ring the bell for Salvation Army. They do Shop with a Cop. Our elementary did a penny drive this year, and that money that they collected was donated to Ronald McDonald House. I want to put a shout out to Mrs. Swaddish and Mrs. Taylor in the high school. They're doing a lot through Facebook this year, and those of you that are on Facebook have seen it. Just an example, they do Wellness Wednesdays. They get with our nurses and have them give them tips that they can put out through Facebook. Just a way to put tips out there, things that'll help, and try to keep community involved. And then the Go Blue in April is scheduled for the support of child abuse awareness. So that was just some of the things. I had, like I said, I had to take a lot off the list that had been in there in the past because of COVID, but I think we've replaced it with a lot of great things. Strengths and benefits of the community involvement program. I honestly, guys, I just listed this word for word from what people responded with in the survey. I felt like if they wanted to report the strength or benefit of the program, I wanted to put their wording in there. So again, I'm not going to read through all of those, but that was just specific examples, responses of what they did with strengths. Just building connections with the community, gets more people involved, people liking to see what their kids are doing, wanting to show off, they're proud of them. They like the emails, being informed, staying connected, showing support, and just wanting to be involved in their kids' education, just to kind of paraphrase some of them. Recommendations that were listed for our community parent involvement: flexible times, less attendees allowed, way too crowded at events, which I think probably depends on what event you go to, so that's where we're at on that. AC in the middle school was something that someone threw out that they would recommend. A group made up of the parent body to plan events, so that was something that was thrown out. Extra credit and more notice on things. And then some things they would like to see offered at school, and I tried to condense this list because some things were repeated. And honestly, as I went through it, a lot of these things we already do. COVID, though, stopped some of them this year. So more tutoring, which we do that, I think, pretty much daily in every building, so that's there. The archery, the skeet programs, and the conservation classes, which we've done. I don't know about the skeet, I know that's been brought up, but I know we do the archery, I believe it still goes on. Is that right, Mrs. Bedeker, archery? Or is this year changed? I know we've done it in the past. Conservation classes, I know we've had, but I don't know if COVID kind of changed that this year.
Yeah, I haven't done those this year.
Okay, I bet, like I said, cheerleading, not just high school kids. Was elementary having some kind of cheer camp this week?
We've done it in the past.
Okay, I heard someone say it was coming up, so fundraising events, I know we do those. The reenactment of the drinking and driving, I know that's something we've done in the past, but I don't know if, like I said, COVID has changed a lot of things. I know I keep repeating that, so. Weekend educational classes, agriculture, fitness, finance, that was something that was kind of thrown out there. The food drives, prayer meetings, science, robotics, programming, shop, we do a lot of those through Bears Den. So I felt like a lot of the things that were thrown out there in some form or fashion we tried to address. I had 38 responses to the survey that went out. The 3 questions that were asked at the end of it: I had attended an activity at school or virtually. I put that in there with my student. 84.2% of those that responded have done that. 71.1% strongly agree attendance at school-related activities benefits their student. And then 92.1% answered that they believe that after school is the most convenient time for them to attend school activities. So that's what I've got. Any questions?
Guess not. Thank you. Do we need to approve that?
Yes.
Need a motion to approve the community involvement program review. Do I have a motion? Troy makes the motion. Do I have a second? Mark seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carried 7-0. Next is our technology program review. Mr. Doan.
Okay, as far as we go this year, so our goal is to provide and utilize technology to enhance the efficiency and effectiveness in the instructional operational programs to meet the district goals, which our goals are, helping the students and the teachers both use the technology. So as far as how technology is used to enhance it, teachers integrate the technology in the classroom and put it in the students' hands. use it to help them get ready for jobs in the 21st century, because every job going forward pretty much uses some form of technology, even if it's nothing more than a cell phone. It helps teachers and students better with communications between each other and helps them meet their educational goals. We try to provide a technology-rich curriculum now where they're using the Google Classroom, and even with the virtual classrooms we were doing before, the Google Classroom was being used in that, but it was also being used in the full-time classrooms. And as far as administrative support, they've been fabulous. If I need something, I can generally run to Dr. Dial or Mr. Dalton, and they'll even come in and help me do stuff when I'm backed up. I've had them help me set up Chromebooks because I was backed up trying to do other things at the same time. This year we added close to 400 Chromebooks, 200 iPads in district, and upgraded elementary schools teachers' computers with either new desktop and Chromebook or new laptops, depending on which ones they required. And we upgraded 45 of the old interactive boards with interactive panels in the lower grades in the elementary and middle school. And I believe Mrs. Nelson and Dr. Hall will agree that they've been pretty cool over there. They work great. I haven't had a teacher complain about one of them yet. We are currently, so with our strengths and our weaknesses, we currently, now that we've added these devices, we've come one-to-one with Chromebooks all throughout the high school, all throughout the middle school, everything from 2nd through 4th grade. We have iPads in the hands of the students from kindergarten and 1st grade. So now in district, we are one-to-one with the device in the student's hand. So any of their classes that they're doing in the Google Classroom or whatever, they have some form of device now that they're using. As far as weaknesses, the biggest weakness, and we know since we're a small school, is funding. Outside bandwidth, especially now that we are one-to-one, our outside bandwidth, we've just got a 500 meg circuit, and Dr. Dial and I was talking about this the other day. We're capped on it now because we have added 500 or 600 devices. So now, at any given time, it may lag some, and it may not, depending on how the classes are going. And we're looking at a solution for that with E-rate funding to where we can quadruple our bandwidth at not a significant cost. It's only going to add about $40 a month to what we're paying. That's what it is. And then the next weakness would be the rest of the other interactive panels we have. We need to really look at upgrading those, and I think that's next on our agenda. And then I kind of wrote a little paragraph at the end of it, and I just said, you know, with the onset of COVID-19, we found ourselves, our students, and our parents kind of pushed into the technological age, whether they really wanted to or not. I've answered somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 calls with parents, helping them get students online at home, helping them work out where they can get into their Google Classroom, having to reset a password because the students forgotten their password after using the same password for the last month. So I can really see where the parents' frustration is when their students are at home, but they've been very amicable. They've been very easy to get along with. They haven't been hateful, they haven't been snotty about it. They just call with a genuine question, and generally 5-10 minutes on the phone and they're happy again. We're going to have to end up replacing somewhere around 300 Chromebooks this summer because Chromebooks only got a shelf life, and I say shelf life, about 5 years before they'll update, and then Google no longer works with the old hardware because drivers go bad. They don't want to have to keep putting the stuff in that works on all the older stuff when the newer technology comes out. So we're to the point where the ones we bought 4 years ago for the high school are now going to be pretty much out of date when next school year rolls around. So we will really have to get those in that freshman's hands next year. Same thing could be said for the 5th graders coming into the middle school, because a lot of those were older, even though we replaced some. They had some of the oldest ones in the district originally, because we bought those with their E-rate funds and other stuff. And then I believe one grade in the elementary school still has some of the older students, right, Dr. Hall? So I mean, realistically, we have to buy 300 of them, basically one per building, one grade per building would end up having heavy Chromebooks each year. Let's see here. And we're looking at E-rate funds to replace access points and Wi-Fi in our buildings because they're basically end of life now also. E-rate funds will pay 85% of whatever we replace. So sounds like a lot, but it's still going to cost us $80,000 to $100,000 to replace Wi-Fi throughout the district. So we end up having to pay $15,000 out of pocket as a district. But when we do that, then we're back up to date for another 10 years with where the technology is going. And that's all I got. Any questions? I know Mr. Treadway and I talked about this a couple months ago about the leases and stuff like that.
Yeah, did you check into that?
Yeah, and companies are supposed to be giving me prices as to what it would cost, because most of them will do a 3-year lease, not a 4-year lease, and I told most of them if we're doing Chromebooks, we need to look at a 4-year lease, that way they've got them throughout their career, so if we give them to them as a freshman, we've got that lease until they graduate high school, and then we give them back to them after they graduate.
Yeah. Usually those lease deals don't work out, but it's good to look at it.
Yeah, and that's why
every now and then there's
I
surprises,
talk to different companies, because I dealt with HP, Dell, and then
Right.
CDW is supposed to get those prices too.
So how much would those 350 Chromebooks cost?
Depending on pricing, so this time last year, I had them priced at $140 a piece plus license.
Oh, wow.
Now, after COVID, they're about $240 a piece, because every school district in the world is trying to go to these.
Right.
Even districts that weren't using Chromebooks before because they figured out how well the Google Classrooms work. So I'm guessing we're going to look at probably $200 to $230 a piece.
$67,500 at $225.
That's less than I thought it'd be.
Yeah.
So.
And we may be able to
technology here.
Yeah, we may be able to work different breaks out buying bulk too, because a lot of times when you buy bulk,
right,
they'll knock a little bit more off price.
When we do the lease thing, I'm probably getting ahead of myself here, but how much time do you spend now working on computers and repairing?
Yeah, a lot.
So,
I either replace a keyboard or a screen on a Chromebook every day, just on a Chromebook.
So we need to take that into account when we start talking about what it's really costing us, so we can free you up to do.
Yeah, other stuff, yes.
Yeah.
So if it's a warranty item, absolutely.
It's not
If it's negligent.
But if it's a lease item.
No.
No, if it's a lease
When the warranty
item,
runs out,
yes.
Well, I know, but you're gonna, the whole idea to me to do leasing is every 3 or 4 years, if it's economically feasible, is to take that thing, stick it in the box and send it back and get a new one.
And that's what we would do on a lease, but if it's broken because of negligence, a kid puts a pencil through the screen, something like that, they're not gonna fix that, that's still on us.
On a lease like that and that happened, would they allow you to fix it or would they have to
Well,
fix
now
it?
see,
Depending on the lease?
and it depends on the company. I'm certified by HP and Dell and a few other companies, so I can actually do warranty work for them. And by doing that, then if it's, and if it's a warranty thing, then they'll ship you parts for it. So I can fix it on site instead of having to pack it up, send it back to them, wait for one to come back. But if it's damaged, since I'm certified by them, they don't care if I fix the stuff. So that doesn't run the warranty, we'll be working on it this way.
Okay. All right.
So do we have a dollar figure lease versus dollar figure buy?
Not for the Chromebooks yet, because we'll bring that to you when
we get ready.
it's time.
Right now, I'm negotiating, I'm trying to get the best price I do ever can.
So we probably need to be way ahead of this with what's going on.
Yeah, I'm trying to get it to where hopefully February or March meeting, we can say, okay, let's get on this and do it. Because if we can do it, we can pre-order it, even if they're not going to ship until, say, July 1, they will bill us July 1 and we can put it on next year.
Do you think there could be that long of a lapse before we could get it?
Right now, I don't see it. Right now, they're flipping them around a little quicker.
Yeah.
When we first ordered the stuff in August, the big problem was every school district in the country jumped on it at the same time. So we didn't end up getting them until Thanksgiving.
So don't COVID funds pay for a lot of this?
Can. Yes.
Can.
Yeah, they can. That's part of that next set That's your two?
Yeah, it's on the
Yeah,
list.
it has, it's on the list.
Good.
Keep us up to date. We want to stay ahead of this deal.
Yep, I will. When I get them back, I'll send them to him and you shoot that to all you.
Okay.
Any more questions for Mr. Dolan? We need a motion to approve the technology program review. Mark makes the motion. Do I have a second? Troy seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carried, 7-0. Next item on the agenda is to consider purchase of high school interactive panels.
So as Mr. Doan talked about, we put interactive panels in just about every classroom in the elementary and middle school. So this 43, we pay for those out of title funds. So this 43 would be out of district dollars. And this would finish us throughout the district to get rid of the old Promethean boards. And most of them are 7 to 10 years old, I believe. We have a couple of newer ones, but very few. So the total purchase price for those with shipping is $81,450. I did have her give me, if we wanted to lease some, I did have her give me, or do a lease payment. It's not, so this looks different. So if you did a 2-year, you make the 2 payments and then you buy each one of them for $1. After that, you own them. So, and on the right in my handwriting is just what the total amount is that the district would pay if you did a 2, 3, 4, or 5. Obviously, if we bought it all at once, it's just the flat rate of $81,450. We would be able to, with those extra $2, we could recoup this money because we can go all the way back to May and recoup any bills. If not, if it was just district dollars, we're in a position where we could afford to do that as well.
What's that interest rate on that? Did they tell you?
They did not. You see the payment
Yeah,
out to the right,
yeah,
so it's not tremendous, but I'm guessing it's 5-6%.
Mm-hmm. Is that something we can use on our taxes, being a lease type deal, or not really?
We don't pay, yeah,
We don't pay any taxes.
we don't pay any taxes.
Okay.
Question. So is this just a loan with a payoff, or
Yeah,
is this a lease?
it's a loan with a payoff because you keep them in the end. There's no residual value. They don't want them back.
Do we have the money?
Yes.
To just buy it?
Yes.
I make a motion, we just buy them.
And we can, it's either going to be district dollars or we can recoup it back at S or 2.
I make a motion, we just buy them.
Motion's been made by Dina to buy these interactive panels. Do we have a second? Randy seconds. Any more discussion?
Mr. Dunn?
Sir.
On these boards,
Yes, sir.
if we buy these, we have enough for everyone?
This finishes every classroom that, so there's 4 rooms in Dr. Hall's building and 4 rooms in Mrs. Nelson's. They get done, that counts those 8. That counts the Performing Arts Center, the Ag Building, and every classroom in the high school, plus the 3 libraries.
Except one who has a brand new Mrs. Embry's.
Now hers is.
I know, hers is brand new, but we wouldn't replace it because it is a smart board that's a year old.
Yeah, well, it's 2 years, it'll be 3 years.
We pay for it out of technology enhancement.
Yeah.
It's,
What I'm getting to is, I guess my question is, are there any extras? Is there anything left over, or is everything going to get used?
Everything should be used.
So then my question becomes, when one tears up, would it be better to have a couple extra to just replace it and then you take it and fix it? Or I don't know if you're going to fix it
See,
or
we
not.
have an extended warranty on these two, don't we? 5 years.
Mm-hmm, it says so.
5-year extended warranty.
So it's a 5-year extended warranty. So if we were gonna have any extras, I would say we would only really need 1 to where if we had to take that one down, we'd have 1 we could put up. I don't foresee 2 of them tearing up at the same time.
Is that something we should do? Go ahead and get another one?
Well, we can do that. I mean, and We could do that even if we wanted to. We could say, put it in the back boardroom here for now and hang it in there, and you guys could use it for meetings, and then as we needed it for a classroom, I could take it down, take it to the classroom, put it up real quick.
What do you guys think?
That's fine. I don't know if we need it, but I think we should have an extra.
Well, that gives me some place to store it, so I'm thinking.
Oh, okay.
Otherwise, I might find some place to store it.
Okay.
No.
Just, you're going to 44.
Okay.
Yep.
One more discussion.
Do we need to change the motion then? or-
Yeah, I'll have to change the motion. I make a motion that we change, don't I?
You can amend the motion.
Excuse me, I have to amend the motion to be 44 boards instead of 43. And then we just purchased them.
The motion has been made to amend the motion. Do we have a second? Dan, second. Any discussion on amending the motion? All those in favor of the amending the motion? Amendment carried 7-0. Now, back to the main motion. Any more discussion? All those in favor of buying 44 interactive boards? Motion carried 7-0. Next item, homeschool students participating in graduation. Yeah, we got to back up on. Consider high school graduation day. Ms. Nash.
So each year, I survey the parents and the students to see if they want either a Friday evening graduation or a Saturday evening graduation. For the class of 2020, they wanted a Friday. For the class of 2021, we had 53% of the people who responded said they wanted a Saturday graduation. So my suggestion would be to have graduation on Saturday, May 15th, 2021.
Saturday.
Do we have a motion? Brandy makes the motion to have graduation May 15th.
Yes.
Do we have a second? Dan seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carried 7-0. Next item. Homeschool students participating in MSHSAA-sanctioned activities. Dr. Dow.
So this topic came up a couple of years ago. Mr. Sawyer is going to give us some background when MSHSAA changed some bylaws, what those look like, what those bylaws look like, what the requirements would be, and then obviously we can have a discussion as a board. Mr. Dalton probably has some information that's relevant as well. So we just wanted to make sure that we were giving you proper information.
Several years ago, MSHSAA come up with dealing with homeschool students and so forth, that the only way that they could participate in extracurricular activities such as your sports or anything that has a competition, okay, that's the big word, competition, that they had to have 80% seat time in the school, okay? Now, just 2 years ago, right before the COVID and stuff hit, okay, they changed that. They went now that you must be seated only 2 hours in the class.
Choose. Each school district could choose.
Each school could choose if they wanted to, okay. That you had to be seated only 2 hours in class and then still be able to participate in athletics, band, or anything like that for a competition. But you have to be seated 2 hours. If you are not seated that 2 hours, okay, say, I'm just going to give you a scenario here, how I see it and so forth, and this is just mine. We have kids that come to school, they get here at 8, 8:15 every morning. They don't leave until 3:30, okay? They don't get up and go outside when they want to. They're in a structured atmosphere and so forth, and we are holding them accountable. That's a big word right here. They have to pass so many classes to be eligible to participate in sports. That's each semester, and I have to check that, okay? They have to pass so many classes. Now, I know there's a lot of homeschool out there that are great. They do a good job with it. But then we also have some that are very lackadaisical with it, that the kid probably doesn't get up till 9 or 9:30. They may work for a couple hours and go outside and walk around for an hour or so, and then come back and do some more work. Our big thing is we can't hold them accountable. We need grades. How can we know when our other kids are having to do all this? It's just not fair to them, I don't think. Okay? And that's my philosophy on that. Several years ago, myself, coaches, some extracurricular sponsors and so forth, we all met. And everybody agreed to this, that what we would want to do is stay with the Msba standards and so forth. Okay. Now, last year COVID hit, we went virtual. We allowed our athletes, our band members and stuff to still participate because we had some schools seated, students, and then we had some that were not. We allowed those students to go ahead and participate in the sports and competitions. A lot of schools around did not.
We're the only one in our conference.
We're the only one in our conference, okay? Now, even now, there are some extra things out there that, you know, you can go public school, you go private, or you go homeschool. There are even some extra things now that homeschool kids can participate in that shows accountability, that then we, as a high school principal or a middle school principal, they have to stay on top of it. It has to be shown to them, and they get to see what grades they're being made. So they're being held accountable. There are some things out there. MOCAP and some other things, correct, Mr. Dalton? So that's where we're at on this. Now, we still have right now, we have some students that are coming in and participating in band, but they can't play in competition. We're allowing them to come in, the SACOs are allowing them to come in and play and so forth, but they cannot participate in any competitions.
So they march in the parades, they play at the ball games.
Right, but they cannot go to SCA, they can go to a go-to district and so forth, okay? If we would have one kid, all it takes is one kid that does something and is ineligible and plays a ball game, guess what we have to do to that ball game? It's a forfeit. I have to call Msba, it's a forfeit, and that's the reason with the homeschooling, you know, if they want to come in and sit for 2 hours, you know, we can hold them accountable. We're good. They can compete in competition. But if they don't, we're going to forfeit ball games. And other besides that, and we checked on this today, if you don't go by those standards and so forth, you don't compete in postseason playoffs. So there'd be no district play for us and so forth in any sports or bands or anything like that. Mr. Dalton, did I leave anything out?
So what I did, I had to print it out in front of me so I could see. So basically, when Coach Sawyer references Msba, Missouri State High School Activities Association, that's who sponsors postseason events. But basically, they list 4 options. The traditional option, kids seated in the regular classroom all day long. That's what has always been. Non-traditional one, transcripted credits. So that includes several things. That's the student who took some or all of their classes virtually. Coach Sawyer referenced MOCAPs. That's DESE approved. When you hear us talk about launch or MOVA, those are all approved through DESE. So that's an example here. An example would be a student taking dual credit classes somewhere else. That counts. Work study program, our co-op. We have kids that earn credits that way. That still counts. They're a student at Ava. So those are examples. So what they're referencing there in that option, all the students' credits are going to be on the transcript. The transcripted credits to get through programs accredited through DESE. That's what that looks like. Non-traditional too. And this is the example he was referencing, seat time plus non-transcripted credits. So this is the option where a student came in, the example they give here, if a student came in for a minimum of 2 credit-bearing seated classes. So a student in theory could come in for 2 classes a day. And then there are other classes, and I have read this before, but this is why I had to read through it again. So they take the rest of the classes through some other program that's not accredited, not a transcripted. Those credits aren't going to show up on a transcript, okay? They have to bring in documentation for some sort of process, either with the high school office, just for example, to document, because Coach Sawyer referenced the 80% rule. What that's based off of is traditional 7-period day. A student has to earn credits in 6 out of 7 classes in that traditional day to be eligible. So that's what this is talking about. There has to be documentation for the additional credits necessary to meet that requirement, even though they're not showing up on the transcript anywhere. But if they came in seated for 2 classes, and then they met those other requirements that we could document, that is another way the student would be eligible. The fourth one actually is not another option, it's just a clarification. And I'm going to get into the language here. Bona fide student is a definition that's made early on, and that's option 1, 2, and 3. If a student went from non-bona fide, so say I had a student who was not meeting either of the 3 scenarios I described to you, they would go from a non-bona fide student to a bona fide student, and there's a transfer. It's considered like a transfer. If they move from not meeting one of these 3 criteria to meeting one of these three criteria, there's a transfer process that the students have to go through to be cleared for eligibility through mission. That is as much as I can be said. There's pages and pages and pages of information.
And I was in a meeting yesterday with 8 schools. 6 of them were conference schools. 2 of them, Forsyth and Hollister, they do not allow anybody, not even the virtual students, to participate, homeschool kids to participate. Not even the virtual students. They have to be in class, in school, to get the structure. So.
Have we ever asked the parents what they feel, how they feel about homeschool students coming in?
Yeah, we had some parents here, one, was it a year, 2 years ago, or whatever, and we tried to explain it to them, Dina, but they still just didn't think that it was fair, you know what I'm saying? I mean, if you get down to just 2 seated classes, that's pretty, I think that would be pretty simple.
It's not just 2. And here it's my turn to talk.
Okay.
So, Missouri homeschool regulations, these are the standards from Missouri for homeschoolers. A student must have 1,000 hours of instruction every school term. 600 hours of the 1,000 must be among the following core credits: reading, math, social studies, language, arts, and science. Subjects must be taught appropriately with the child's age and ability. Of the 600 hours of core subjects taught, 400 must occur in the regular homeschool location. So they're not just running around out in the yard all the time. If you are homeschooling a child who is younger than 16, you must maintain the following records for the child: a plan book, diary, or other record indicating subjects taught and education activities engaged in, samples of students' work, academic evaluations. Also recommended at least 2 full years of records for elementary, middle school, and 4 years of high school. Now, MSHSAA already allows it, so it's up to the district. But MSHSAA has already passed it. It's okay for us to bring homeschoolers in, but we have to okay it as a board. That's how it works.
That is correct.
That's how it works.
That's correct.
So what MSHSAA, they sent us a deal back in 2018, and they told us the same information. It's not a big deal. There's a lot of schools already doing it. There are even homeschool full teams competing with MSHSAA right now. Actually, there's dozens of them. What they recommended was the option 2, which we talked about back in 2018. It says that the student is enrolled. The student is an enrolled student of the public school of residence as defined by law 3.10 and has taken a minimum of 2 credit-bearing seat time classes for a minimum of 1 unit of credit at the high school. And the high school administration confirms after a full academic review, which is not a big deal. We do the same thing if a private school kid comes in. We review and make sure that they're up to par what they said they were. This is not a big deal. You know, anybody that's a professional in education could probably, if the teacher is at that grade level, could probably come in, look at it in 15 minutes, tell you if it's up to par or not. So, you know, that was one of the big concerns back in 2018 by your committee. And it's not a big deal. So basically the high school administration confirms, and the student is further enrolled in the courses taken outside of the school. So it's not just 2 hours, they're still doing their other hours to meet this 1,000 hour requirement on the rest of the day. It's a big thing for these homeschoolers that they want to come in because they've got to do the regular school, they got to come into this school and do their classes, which we get paid for, right?
Yeah, we get paid for it.
We'll get paid for it.
For their
The school, right, it's not the full amount.
I don't want to
but, yeah.
interrupt you, but I think you're talking exactly what
That's
Mr.
not
Beck
what
just
you
said
said
right there. That's what he
That's what I
read.
just read there, yeah.
Mhm.
That's it.
Right.
Yep.
So they're not just not, they're coming in for 2 hours and then they get to go home and just run around the yard.
I didn't mean it that way.
Well, it sounded that way.
Well, I didn't mean it that way. Now, are you an advocate for private school and homeschooling, or are you a public school? That's what I would like to know. And I agree. I mean, I said it a while ago, there are several kids and so forth and parents that do it the correct way. But you have several that don't also.
Hey, listen, this is a public school.
Yes, it is.
That means
they have the choice to come to public school.
The public owns this school, okay? Whether they go to this school or not, they have access to it. You are denying access to people that pay the taxes on their property tax, and they pay taxes every time they walk into a store and buy something. And you are denying access. You know, back in 2011, there was a deal where the board could allow access for people that go in this district to like Skyline to be able to come over here and compete in our sports. That was the right thing. It allowed access. What we did 2 years ago, what we did 2 years ago, we denied access to people in this community that own this school. This isn't your school, it's not mine, it's not Dr. Dial's, it's not the board president, it's all of ours. Yeah, so if they want access to it, they can get it. MSHSAA already allows it. They've already changed their by laws and put it in there. And it's just because of, you know, this deal that you gave us 2 years ago, it's not based on any stat or anything but just an opinion. Now, I think that the ACT testing is a good indicator of where a student is at as they're prepared for college. Do you agree?
Yes, sir. Yeah. ACT is great.
This is from ACT, from themselves. Okay, so this is a 14-year study by ACT, and they compare private, homeschooled, and public ACT scores for 14 years by ACT, the guys that make the test. Homeschoolers consistently score higher than the public schools, from 1.4 points to 2.2 points higher than homeschool, or than public school. Private school even is higher than that. So if these kids are just running around playing games out in the yard, how are they testing higher? So I don't think we have to worry about seat time. The MSHSAA actually tells us we've got to check what they're doing, and it allows for it. The stuff that the homeschooler has to keep on file or a private school is sufficient for us to look at. I don't think we have to worry about that they're not doing their thing. They're not doing their, you can look at this test right here. I've got it right here, you can have one. It's from ACT.
That's fine. I'm just telling you.
You are, it's a fear thing. This is no different than what just happened with this cafeteria thing. We've been feeding these kids stuff that wasn't even worth eating for 5 years over fear that we were going to do something that wasn't going to be as good. And look at it, it's a lot better. It was wrong to vote that down 5 years ago, and it was wrong to vote this down in 2018, because everybody in this community owns this school, and they all should have access to it, especially when MSHSAA allows it. Now, when MSHSAA didn't allow it, that was one thing, but now they allow it. So that's where I'm at, and I'll make the motion. I'm going to make a motion to the board directs the superintendent to create all necessary processes and procedures to allow part-time high school students to participate in all MSHSAA activities under MSHSAA bylaws 2.3.4C addressing non-traditional option 2 students. Pass that to BJ.
Motion has been made to allow option 2. Is that option 2, correct?
Non-traditional option 2. Okay.
Do we have a second? Dan seconds. Discussion.
I want to ask the people out here, since we don't have parents, although some of you are parents, how do you feel? How do you feel about this? Larry, how would you feel? If you had students, how would you feel? Do you feel?
Well, I think it's, from a taxpayer standpoint, it would seem reasonable that if they comply with all the rules, to allow them to play sports and other activities. There's rules to govern it, and it would seem like it would be a fair thing.
Tommy, what do you think? You have students in the school.
Yeah, I do. I guess the way that I would look at it is, I mean, I don't want to homeschool my kids. There are a lot of people that would, but if my kid wanted to participate in basketball or football or anything like that, I would think that they should be able to.
Because the school is owned by the taxpayers.
I mean, if my property, most of my property taxes goes to the school.
Mine.
So, I mean.
Hey, Judy, what's your opinion?
Well, if the kid wanted to play sports, they should play sports. So, I'd want to play sports.
That's Dwayne Match.
Okay,
He said
Dwayne,
dogs
what do
come
you
through
think?
and They had to do all everything.
Dwayne, what do you think? Oh, man.
Be honest.
Well, my kids came to this school. They got up every morning, caught the bus, come up here, got dressed, went through their all day up here. Now my grandkids are coming to school here, doing the same thing. I got ones in 7th grade, going through sports. I ain't got nothing against homeschool, nothing. But I just don't think it's right for one to come up here and set 2 hours and get to be able to play when all these other kids are up here all day long. They're going through so much more, and I ain't got nothing against either one of them. I mean, homeschool's fun. I ain't got a problem with that. Like you said, parents pay their taxes. I'm kind of caught both ways, but I just don't feel like I got a problem with it. I just feel like these other kids are due so much more to have that privilege to play sports, and them others come in just for 2 hours and get the same privilege.
So you don't think they do anything the rest of the day?
Did I say that?
Well, I mean,
When you
guys say that, it sounds like you're saying that all they do is 2 hours and they get to play. But they're not. They're doing the same thing. They got to put 1,000 hours in before they get.
What I'm saying is, just like my kids, my grandkids, everybody else's kids, they got up. Some of these kids catch buses at 6 o'clock in the morning. They come up here and go to school. Homeschool kid gets up and, I don't know, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, walks into the kitchen table, sits there in his underwear and maybe a pair of socks, does his work.
I homeschooled 3 kids, and not once were they in their underwear. Not ever.
Well,
and they didn't do it at the kitchen table.
I mean, these others.
There's a perception out there. There's a perception out there that these homeschoolers just don't have anything to do. I'm telling you, I've done it. I have lived it.
Well, I'm not saying nothing against
every one of my kids did very well on the ACT. They all attended college. They all graduated. It's not this just fun and games deal. The curriculums, most of them are a lot harder than at public school. I mean, I hate to say it, but it is. The one we did was.
Well, that's just how I stand. I just feel like these other kids put out so much more, and I'm not saying nothing against homeschool. There's a lot of kids that do it, and it's fine if that's the way you want to do it. But I just see that these kids that go to school, they just go through so much more and do so much more.
More work?
More everything. They get up earlier, they
So it's all about getting up?
Oh, would you quit putting words in my mouth?
I mean, to perform better on an ACT test, you have to do something. You have to do school. You're not gonna perform at a high level on ACT tests, homeschooling, if you're not doing very much. If you're doing less instead of doing more like you think that they do here, they're not going to perform doing less.
Do most homeschool kids take the ACT?
Do most public?
I don't know. What's the percent? I was going to ask that next.
I don't know, but that's just that's an ACT statistic.
Yeah, I just don't know if that's an accurate statistic, because I don't know.
Well, if they're not accurate, we need to get rid of our ACT tests.
You're not understanding what I'm saying.
Okay.
Is if the same percentage of kids are taking,
we just need to take a vote.
No, no.
First of all,
I think that we need to consider having a survey of the parents of the school and how they would feel about homeschool. They're the taxpayers. They're the ones that pay the bills.
Are you going to have the homeschoolers come in?
Come in what?
The group.
And do the survey.
They can do the survey. I don't see why they couldn't.
okay, first of all, and I'm as guilty as anybody, getting a little adversarial, and I realize it's a heated topic, but let's try to get through it without, I guess, have a reasonable discussion. Now, Troy's probably not going to tell you, and I may be in trouble for telling you. I know from having conversations with Troy, and I realize every school's different, every parent's going to be different, but Troy's kids scored, the lowest was 24, I believe, and the highest was 29 on an ACT test, which is far above what we're doing here at Ava for an average. It's not for us to sit here, in my opinion, and judge whether or not kids get up early or what they have to struggle through. The question is, are they getting an education? It's not for me to judge how long they ride the bus and all the struggles they go through. Are they getting an education? If the answer is yes, and if they're meeting all the qualifications, then they should, unless there's some legal ramification that we're going to get sued or something, they should be able to play ball, in my opinion. It's not for me to judge how parents raise their kids if they're actually giving them an education. They must be doing something right, or evidently somebody in the state would be coming down on them saying, what are you doing with your kid? They're not enrolled in school. I mean, I don't know how they do that, but they don't. Okay. But whether or not they pay taxes. And if you do a survey, you're going to have all these people out here that are against it because their kids aren't homeschooled. It won't be a fair survey. I don't believe it. I believe those people are entitled to their right just like anybody else. And I believe that all the people that send their kids to public school, it's like, okay, Troy and I have had this discussion too, and we don't really agree. Let's say private school and charter school. And let's talk school vouchers, which is in this House bill. In fact, Senate bill. If you give vouchers to kids to go to other schools, I wouldn't have such a problem with that if those other schools are held accountable by the state, just like a public school is. If a private school can take any kid they want and not take the other kids, in my opinion, they have to be required to take all kids. And if they're not going to take all the kids, then all they're going to take is the cream of the crop. And public schools left with kids with learning disabilities, behavior problems, and to me, you destroy the public school system when you start vouchers. That's another discussion for another day. But I see nothing wrong with letting homeschoolers play ball. It's not for me to judge how those people raise their kids. They pay the tax dollars for their kids to come to school. Did you ever stop and think if there's kids, if we have a school environment where kids don't get bullied and they're treated equally, and I realize life is what it is, nothing's ever perfect. Did you ever think that those kids might want to quit homeschooling and come to Ava High School? I mean, do we not want more enrollment and more participation? Do we not want all the kids to come to Ava High School? my opinion, and I'm not knocking anybody else's opinion, guys, but I'm just saying, let's think it over and be calm about it. That's it.
I have two questions. If we allow it, do they participate in all the mission, everything?
So if we allowed, what'd you call it? Give me the option two. Number two.
Non-traditional.
Non-traditional two.
Right.
So they would be allowed to participate in anything that anybody that was full-time enrolled would be allowed to participate in. So that's correct. As long as they proceeded 2 hours and proved academic progress, I think is the word that's used. So they were a bona fide student. And that was reviewed by the counselor or the principal. They would be able to participate, whether it be district, state level competition, any MSHSAA-sanctioned activity.
Question number two.
Is that the way you read it, Mr. Treadway?
Well, right now,
No,
it's like you said, we can have somebody that's in band, but then whenever they go to a state competition, that kid's got to stay home. And then the rest of them, they've been playing with them all year. They just tromp on up and do their state, whatever, competition. And then that one has to stay home, or two, or whatever. That's not right, people. That is not the way it works. This is a public school.
That's the way, I just want to make sure you.
But I did, in my motion, put all MSHSAA activities.
Yes.
Okay.
Question number two. How do we verify?
So that would be a process we would have to investigate to ensure that we have, I would guess, Mr. Treadway, I would want a copy of what you're reading just to be sure that we're on the same page, but they have to keep records, diaries, examples of their work. I assume there's tests, especially if they purchase a program. There would be, we would ask for assessments on those.
Yep, and the school can ask at any time.
Yeah.
They can ask them to bring it in.
So we'd want to check it by
And
quarter like we do everybody else.
And they take an assessment.
It goes by the MSHSAA rules right here.
Depending on the homeschool program, and I'm not an expert by any means, but they would have assessments, I would think. I know that our MOCAP providers have assessments, so I'd assume the homeschool program has assessments as well.
The school can request them to bring in their school books, work, tests, evaluations, and they'd have to bring it in if we request it, if we feel that we need to do that.
We would want to do that quarterly, just like we do with everybody else when we review grades. Eligibility is done at semester, and they have to pass so many classes. It's 6 classes.
Yes, 6 of the 7. First semester, you have to pass 6 of the 7 classes to be eligible second semester. Second semester will determine the first semester of the following year.
And that's eligibility requirement as well. We'd want to follow it.
So there's all kinds of rules in there, so like
just verify.
If a student that's presently here is failing and then they decide, well, I'm gonna go homeschool so I can then get back in, they can't. There's a 1-year pause on that.
Yeah.
So,
365.
So that keeps from happening. MSHSAA's got a lot of good rules for this, exactly for this. And there's schools already doing it. I mean, there's many schools doing it, it's no big deal.
I think that's one of the biggest concerns is the accountability, and that's from a parent, a teacher, and a previous coach standpoint. Because even right now, I see kids with all the COVID and stuff going on, they tried virtual, well, that didn't work, that was too hard. They know when they come to school that they're gonna have to be here on time, they're gonna have to be seated, they're gonna be required to get, things done. So now I see them, oh, we're gonna try launch. Oh, launch was harder than I thought it was. We're just gonna sign a homeschool form. So I think, and homeschool can be done correctly. I know lots of people that are doing it correctly. But I also know some with the current situation we have going on they think they're taking the easy way out. I think we just need a very rigorous, very structured way to evaluate where they're at when they do try to come back in and stick by those, because accountability is, I think, the biggest worry as teachers, parents, coaches we have, because I have no way of knowing what the homeschool kids that are doing 8th grade homeschool this year are doing. And some I know are not doing a whole lot. So accountability is the biggest.
Can we test those kids just like we test our kids every year? They're part of our school system.
Well, if they are enrolled in the class, so let's say one of their 2 classes was Algebra 1, we would have to test them. But if they're not, I don't know. I'd have to do some investigation into that.
Well, it's the voucher thing. And I believe sooner or later there's so much voucher stuff going on. It's just going to continue it's coming. So, in a way, I look at it like every school is in competition with the other school. And we need to be on our toes, and we need to be the best we can be. And I think that by allowing these kids to come in, maybe we'll have less kids seeking school somewhere else, whether it be Christian school or homeschool. Just an idea.
There's something that nobody's even mentioned. And I realize that they may be only 1 or 2 students. If we pass this, there may only be 1 or 2 students. But if those 1 or 2 come in and sit for 2 hours in our classrooms, there's a possibility that they may decide they like public school better than they do homeschool. That's a very real possibility, you know.
Guys, how many times have you all said it's all about the kids? If a kid wants to play sports, there should be a way for them to play sports. It's great and fine. The phrase, it's all about the kids. That child wants to play, that child should play.
Are the classes core or elective?
The 2 that they take in the public school, I think it can be either. But they still have to prove that they're core. They can bring their work right in. We can have whoever we designate to look at that. Probably the same people that look at, like if Ava Victory was the kid comes over, you guys go through it, right?
We do transcript analysis.
Right, so it's the same thing.
I thought he was talking about the 2 you're going to take here.
Yeah. So
yeah, I think it's either.
Yeah, it doesn't specify
it
it
can
has to
be
be core or elective classes.
Yeah,
it doesn't.
It can be
the mission world
different things.
I have one question too, and probably would never have any of it. How do we gauge discipline on those kids? Okay?
What do you mean?
If that kid gets in trouble, what do we do?
In trouble at school?
Yes, sir.
You treat them the same way as a public student. They're going to be probably kicked off the team, right?
Not necessarily, no.
Well, it would be the same rule.
So they go to ISS over here?
If you would...
Actually, no, I'm just asking.
Well, I mean...
They got in trouble in class.
If they got in trouble in class, I would say that they would probably just move them off the team, right?
You would have to hold them accountable the same way you would a regular kid. So if they did something that was detention worthy or ISS worthy, they would be held accountable the same.
I mean, I don't know, when I went to school, if you ended up in detention, I don't think you got to play for a while. I remember that.
Any more discussion?
Yeah, I think I'm looking at it a little bit differently, and I agree with it is all about the students. I want kids to be able to play, and I want everybody that pays taxes. I would like everybody that pays taxes and all the people that live within our school district too.
Hey, we got a meeting going on here. Thank you. Go ahead.
What I was going to say was, I agree with everybody that lives in the school district pays taxes to this school system, and in a way has that has a right to have access to this school, and I think they do. I think all those homeschoolers have access to play sports. They just have to. I mean, in any time in the school year, they can enroll in our school, can't they? I don't think we're denying anything. I think it's always been there. They've always had that opportunity. Yeah, they choose to do homeschool. And with that, we don't have the same accountability. I know that you're saying that there are some avenues to try to simulate that same accountability. Not quite the same, but they all do have the same access. They do have all the same right to the public school and the activities.
But they don't have rights to play sports under MSHSAA unless we okay it. Some of these families don't attend because of religion, because of their beliefs. Maybe they don't like the teaching evolution. There's different things that they don't believe in. There's rights there. So, but what I'm saying is this is a public school. They own it just as much as I do.
I agree.
Much as you do. I pay over $1,000 a year just in property tax to this school. Haven't used none of it at this school. It'd been nice. My son was pretty good at basketball. He did play on a team for Ava Victory. It would have been nice to let him play over here. He's pretty good. He didn't get to play over here. Back then, they wouldn't allow it. They didn't allow it till 2018. Now they allow it. Now it's just up to the school to okay it, and it's a done deal. If it was so bad, why would they allow it? They're the ones, they govern all of it. If it was so hard, and there were so many penalties, so many ways you could get kicked out, why would they allow it? Why would they have all these rules to make it happen? It's not as complicated as it looks.
That's just my opinion. I think everybody does have access to it. I think they all have the right to play. I think they just have to be in school here.
They will have to attend school here to be able to play in a MSHSAA activity or to participate. They would have to enroll in 1 credit a year?
1 credit, 2 classes.
1 credit a year.
1 credit a semester. 2 classes.
Okay. They would have to do that. They can't just come in and play. They've got to enroll. But that doesn't mean they're getting all their classes here. They're still getting some homeschooled. And it's the same thing if we pass this, if Skyline didn't have a sport that we have or an activity that we don't have, or that we have that they don't have, such as, do they have band, do they have,
It was just middle schools, but Skyline, they co-op, it was co-op.
Okay, so if there was a high school, there's counties with other schools with high schools, and they didn't have a sport, they could do the same thing,
No.
they could move over. Yeah,
They can co-op with us, but we have to take their attendance and add it on to ours, and that can bump you up a classification. It's called a co-op.
But I mean, MSHSAA allows it.
Yes.
Yeah, but you have to take their entire school attendance.
But they didn't used to allow it.
No, the co-op was created about 8 to 10 years ago.
That was at 2011.
But that's the reason we can't do it, because we don't want to bump up in classifications.
Homeschool is going
You
to
know.
put us up in classification.
But you don't want to jump up in a classification, but there's some other people, that's not that big a deal. It's a big deal to you.
It's a big deal to our school if we're going to be able to compete with people, I promise you.
Yeah.
So you'd be in favor of restricting people to keep that class where you want it versus letting it grow and get bigger? Yeah.
That's not what he's saying.
He doesn't want our class to go to a higher level.
Why?
Because
we're going to be
harder to
competing
compete.
against Camden, all the bigger schools. We can't compete with them with our numbers.
Yes.
So now, okay, I don't want to be.
Sure, go ahead, Dan.
But when we begin to talk about that, we begin to talk about what's good for us and not what's good for the kid. We're talking about we can't compete, so it's all about the athletics, it's not about the education.
But we're talking about other schools like Gainesville or Mansfield or something want to send 1 kid up here to play ball, they asked, and that bumps everything up.
I want to tell you, I'm going to get in trouble for this.
I'm all for kids, believe me, I wouldn't be in this for 37 years if I wasn't for kids, okay?
I don't normally go watch ball games, but I always pay attention to who's doing what, on the radio or the TV or whatever, and I always kind of follow what's going on. Went to the state game in Columbia. Got our butts kicked. But I couldn't have been more proud to say I was from Ava, because those kids, I could tell, they had a whale of a team, and that was the first time I saw them play. There was no doubt in my mind they were a great team, and they were a great bunch of kids with very good discipline. And everybody should have been proud. But at the same time, and I realize athletics builds character in a lot of ways, and it teaches people teamwork and how to work together for a common cause. But sometimes athletics get in the way of the kids' education. And we're here to educate kids, number one.
And I agree with you, but athletics keep a lot of kids in school also.
I also agree with that. And it keeps some kids out of trouble.
Yes.
Some kids that were nobodies, all of a sudden they're somebody. But on the other hand, sometimes kids get to be somebody and think they're really a cool dude and they're not.
But this co-op thing's completely different than the homeschool.
I think we're getting a little off.
Yeah, we are, yeah.
We have a motion on the floor and a second. Discussion over. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carried, 4-3. Next item on the agenda. Keep a very detailed list on this. We would like to know how many.
I'm gonna bring you back the process.
There you go.
I'll give it to you next month.
Yes. Next item on the agenda, set Ava School Board reorganization meeting. Mr. Dow.
So it has to be within 14 days of the election by state statute. So our April 15th meeting is 14 days within the time of the election. So we would have our reorganization meeting at 6:15 on April 15th, which is the third Thursday.
We need a motion to have the reorganization meeting. Right there. April 15th at 6:15. Do I have a motion? Dan makes the motion. Do I have a second? Troy second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carried 7-0.
Next regular board meeting is February 18th at 6:30 in this room. We need to adjourn closed session.
We need a motion to adjourn the closed session. Somebody want to make that? Randy makes the motion, Mark seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carried 7-0.
Phones for you? You want? Yeah. You yeah, he's retired.
Kids are
How are you?
All right, yeah.
I'm doing very well. Better when I don't do nothing.